In this video, I'll demonstrate a few techniques on how to clean some survey data that I collected using Google Forms. Cleaning my survey data is the first step in preparing for further data analysis and will make it much easier to find interesting trends and patterns. It's also a critical step in ensuring that my data is valid and accurate, so I'll be looking to correct any mistakes that could skew my data or lead me to false results. To get started, I'll open my Google survey that I sent to my friends and colleagues on the impact of email. You can see here that I've collected 25 responses, so I'll click on the Responses tab to view them. And then I'll click View in Sheets, which will open all of my survey responses in a spreadsheet. Before I make any changes to the data, I'm going to create a copy of the responses that I can work on so that I don't modify the original data that was collected, just in case I need it in the future. Using the copy, I'm going to reduce my column width and wrap the text so that I can view the data a little better. So first I'll select my columns. I'll reduce the column width. And then with my columns still selected, I'm going to wrap the text. So now we can see it all in one view. Now the first thing I want to do is correct any errors in my data. For this data set, errors will likely only appear in the free-form text responses, which are "How old are you?" and the question asking to describe the impact here. All of the other questions were required and had a predetermined response to choose from, like yes or no, or on a linear scale of 1 to 5. So these questions should not contain any errors, and your data set might not contain any errors either. So let's look at the column based on the respondent's age. Most of these appear to be in the numerical format, which is what we intended, but there are a few that have some text. This one says 25 years old, so we can simply change this to 25, as it's clear that's what the person intended. Looking further down, we can see that this one spells out 21, so again we can change this to the numerical value of 21, because again it's very clear what they intended. This response says ancient, so we can probably assume this person is old, but we don't really know what the numerical value would be for old. So we have a couple choices we can make here. One is that we can remove the age response, leaving the cell blank, but keeping the rest of the question responses in the row. Or we can choose to remove the entire row, omitting all survey question responses for that person. Either choice is fine as long as you're consistent throughout your data set. For this demo, I'll just remove the age, leaving the cell empty, but keeping the other question responses. This last response is a numerical value, but the number is too high to be a valid age. We might assume the respondent meant 19, or perhaps they meant 90, but since we don't really know which is correct, we'll remove the age response, leaving that cell blank. Continuing on with the free-form text responses, I'm going to now categorize the column that asked how email has impacted your life, this column here. To do this, I need to first read the responses to find common themes. As I read through them, I see some themes like making communication faster and easier. I also notice some keywords like communication, connection, and accounts. This may take a little time to think about and decide on categories, which is expected. Start with the main themes and keywords that you see. Using a category for general or no response is okay too. And once you get started, you can refine the categories or add new ones as you go. So to get started, I'll add a new column called Impact Standardized. Then I'll start categorizing data based on the main theme that I saw. And we'll call it Communication Connection. Wherever I see these words, I'll insert the categorized text. Another theme that I noticed was using email for school and work, so I'll begin to categorize those responses as school/work. I also see that it's used for accounts, so I'll add a category called accounts/services. For the general responses, whether positive or negative, I'll add a category called General Use/Impact. And finally, I'll add a category for no response if they didn't answer the question or if they responded as not applicable. Categorizing these free response categories will help with filtering the data and also become important in analysis and visualization. Now I want to filter my data based on the column heading. So I'll select the first row of my spreadsheet that contains my survey questions. Then I'll select Data, Create a Filter. This will create the arrows on my column headers that will allow me to filter the data in each of the columns. To filter the data in one column, I'm going to demonstrate a filter based on gender. So I'll select the arrow next to gender, and I just want to look at the female responses. So I'm going to clear all of the options and then click on just female, and then scroll down and hit OK. You can see here that the female responses are mostly positive, with a couple neutral responses. Now I'm going to undo that last filter so I can do some more complex filtering. To do a little more complex filtering, I want to focus on responses that state the impact of email being mostly positive or mostly negative. That is, I want to filter out the neutral and I'm not sure responses. So I'll click the drop-down arrow, and again, I'll clear the selection and choose only mostly negative and mostly positive. Then I'll click OK. Now, of these responses, I want to further filter my data to view only responses from those under 40 years old. To do this, I'll use a conditional filter. I'll select the arrow next to the age column and click on the Filter by Condition. I'll select less than from the options, and I'll enter 40 and click OK. Now you can see that only responses from those under 40 years old are showing up. My responses are currently sorted by the date that they were recorded, but it would be more helpful for me to view them by age, starting with the youngest to oldest. So finally, I'm going to sort the data in the age column in ascending order, so I'll select Sort A to Z, which will sort my ages from smallest to largest. You can see from this process that there are many ways to sort, filter, and clean your data, and much of this relies on you as the human using the computer to make decisions about how to fix errors and what kinds of filters to apply to find patterns and trends in your data. Cleaning this survey data using a spreadsheet like this is possible because this data set is not extremely large. So I was able to manually scroll through the data and look for errors. But what if this was a large data set with thousands of rows? It would take an extremely long time to correct errors manually, and there would be a lot of room for human error. If there were millions of rows, it would become an impossible task. This is where the power of computation really comes into play. Computer programs can be written to do what I was doing, look for errors and correct or delete them according to a set of rules. And this can be done automatically to thousands of rows or data in just seconds.